Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first of the three-part Trizons webinar series, The Future of Commerce. Here, we're going to examine what the future of commerce looks like in a rapidly evolving landscape. I'm Ali Pham, I'm the editor of Power Retail, and it's lovely to have you all here today. We have a great lineup of panelists, as you can see, but before I introduce everybody, I have a quick bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, there is a questions tab on the pop-up of the screen, and we'll do our best to answer all of the questions at the end of the session. So today we're joined by Kate Morris, the founder of Adore Beauty, and James Lutschmeyer, the managing director ANZ of Trizons. Nice to see you guys here.
Hi.
It's undeniable that consumer habits have already been shaped rapidly and extremely by the closure of stores and non-essential services. So today, this live panel will give insights and practical tips on how to run an effective digital offering and meet expectations. So today we're going to be looking at how consumers have changed and what an effective online offering looks like to place the customer at the center. So Kate Morris, I'm just going to start with you. How have consumers' behavior changed in the last 8 weeks?
Yeah, look, it's gone through a few different phases, Ali. We saw, and it kind of started changing sort of early to mid-March, I guess, when there started to be a lot more talk around things. And we first saw that big spike in all of a sudden hand wash and hand sanitizer just went nuts. And which is, I mean, we sell a lot of, Aesop hand wash, that kind of thing, but hand sanitizer is usually not that big of a category for us. And so we didn't have any kind of controls in place to limit that. And all of a sudden it was just, whoop, it was gone. And that happened really fast. And we thought, oh, people are starting to freak out a little bit. And then we had the next phase, which is when things started to go into lockdown. And I think we really noticed it. I think Myer announced that they were closing their stores. And then people kind of went into full on kind of panic mode and started panic buying essentials. So that was the kind of the toilet paper phase. And I guess the equivalent for us was, things like skincare, shampoo, conditioner, things that people thought, oh, if we go into lockdown and I can't get any of this, what are the things that I need to make sure that I have? And we really found during that time there's this kind of very high level of anxiety, and we had to start doing a lot of comms around just kind of acknowledging what was happening and saying, look, we know that there's a lot more going on in the world than beauty products. Like, we get it. We're still going to keep talking about beauty products because we think actually probably everybody needs, it's not healthy for us all to just be thinking about, pandemics day and night. And so, but we had to kind of say that actually we're going to still talk about beauty products just as a bit of a, relief for you all and a little break in your feed. But to come out and say why we were doing that. And then look, I think it kind of moved into kind of a coping in ISO sort of mode where people were looking for, people are cooped up in the house, feeling a bit wretched, not getting to have their usual social lives, every day is the same, and we start to see people focus on little luxuries. So we started seeing at that point spikes in things like candles and hand cream and face masks and like not the medical kind, but the sheet mask kind, because
the sheet masks, yeah.
That's it. And because I think and it was less about I need to look nice, but much more about I need to feel good. And so it was much more the sorts of self-care kind of categories that people were looking for. They want something to make them feel nourished and like they've had a treat, and maybe the other things that they would usually do, go out for dinner with your friends or go and have a facial, that kind of thing. Like you can't do any of that. So people were looking for those little self-care moments.
Wonderful, yeah, definitely. I can relate to all of those changes too.
Yep.
And so, James, have you seen any of these similar changes? What kind of behavioural changes have you seen from the Trizons point of view for consumers?
Yeah, I mean, working with a number of retailers, I guess we come at it from more of a data point of view and look at the overall trend that we're seeing. But we're very much seeing the same sort of trend as Kate's seeing at Adore Beauty. So we're seeing orders and revenues jump up quite sharply in weeks 1 and 2, then seeing that stabilisation of that uplift. And then as things are becoming now the new normal, in the past 1 to 2 weeks, we're seeing a steady increase. The overall increase online obviously being to do with people can't get to store. So that's really looking at it from a pure online perspective. Seeing online traffic and visits increase by about 30% as well. And really what we're hearing is that, whilst overall campaign activity in EDMs are going up, they're also a much higher level of click-through with communications. And consumers have now more time on their hands, and therefore they're able to engage more from both an email marketing standpoint as well as actually on the website. So we're seeing increases in overall session time as much as 25%. People are working from home but looking for distractions and are browsing online more, and it's really it's not a surprise. It's the only shopping channel that's really been open, the only store that's really been open and that consumers have been able to get access to. So very much seeing a similar overall trend, certainly from our customer estate.
It's very interesting. Kate, have you noticed that there's been any uptake in traffic or anything in the last 8 weeks compared to normal?
Oh yeah, like massive uplift for us. So and that's there's a few things going on there. I think a big part of it is a lot of the places that people would normally go to buy these sorts of products, maybe you get your shampoo from your hairdresser or skincare products from a skin clinic. All of those, a lot of those places have been closed. I think also too, nobody's going out, nobody's got any social life, so there's certainly what are you going to do? You can hang out on the couch. If you've already watched everything on Netflix, then I guess people are looking for other content to consume or just browsing a lot more. And like I said, I think nobody's going out and spending their money on restaurants, so they're looking for little feel-good things to purchase. So yeah, it's been quite a dramatic uplift for us.
Have there been, apologies, any adjustments that you've made to the way that you sell online to accommodate these changes?
Yeah, look, it's not actually come without its challenges. Obviously, this is, all of a sudden a dramatic spike in volume is not something that we were really prepared for, and we've had to do a lot of comms in terms of communicating to our regular customers that you've been used to having us always sort of dispatching on the same day at the keeping in constant communication about roughly how long they can expect for us to need to be able to get their order out. There's been lots of out of stocks or things like that where products have spiked or where there's been difficulties in the supply chain. That sort of started back with China, I guess, when they first went into lockdown in Feb, and there's just little kind of flow on things happening. So the communication part's been really important. I think it's definitely been trying to accustom to where customers are at in their heads at any kind of given point in time. So there's a lot that people are, early on, for instance, we were getting so many people asking us, on our socials, this is great talking about, makeup and that kind of thing, but nobody's going out at the moment. What I really need to know is, how do I get my shellac off? And so being able to kind of pivot, I guess, because usually, we'll be working to content plans, and sometimes you've got to kind of look at that and go, okay, this is what people actually need to know from us right now, is how do they cope with the fact that they're in ISO and a lot of the services that they're used to using aren't available at the moment. And even if it's not, if it doesn't mean, that we can sort of necessarily sell them a product off of the back of that, well, they're looking to us as the experts in this, and we need to be able to respond.
Definitely. And James, do you have anything to add? Have you seen any adjustments to the way people?
Yeah, I thought what was interesting is
that?
you meant the anticipated volume wasn't expected in terms of uplift, and that causes obviously some challenges in terms of fulfillment, and it's incredibly important to manage your fulfillment promise to the customer, and also measure how understanding they are being of the overall situation. I think customers are generally now being more patient, but you still need to manage their overall expectation. One of our customers who we were speaking to, actually, they've seen an uplift in orders, but they've also had to implement social distancing in the warehouse. Those two things, don't necessarily blend that well together.
Yeah, it's really hard.
So not only are you managing a longer fulfillment promise, and customers are taking longer to get their products, but then there are also those who are expecting their returns and refunds to also be processed. So you're dealing with a larger backlog of orders you're needing to get out, but you're also dealing with customers who are expecting their returns and refunds, and which one do you prioritize? I think you need to look at that challenge, and I think there's a decision that needs to be made. So I think that the specific customer I'm talking about had to prioritize actually the returns, because people are becoming more sensitive to the cash that they have available to them in that particular demographic of that purchaser, to ensure that they actually have their cash available, because at the moment liquidity is obviously king. So I thought that point was quite interesting, and it's obviously this whole situation has generated probably a surprise demand for the way we need to interact with products, and how we actually look at categorizing the products. And certainly the customers that we're working with are have quickly moved to recategorizing their products into I guess more of a persona and activity type approach. So looking at how you can bring those small luxuries, the spa experience home, because people can't get to the spa. How can we bring the skincare routine to the home, rather than going in and getting their skincare routine out before they would be going out to social events as such. So it's really trying to bring those things to the home and categorizing products in such a way that feel intuitive to purchase the overall range to bring that experience home. So certainly we're seeing that happening as well with the majority of our customers. And to look at a different, I guess, vertical, sport and fashion, we're seeing the uptake of exercise at home. We're seeing product bundles which are by the leggings, by the top, and you're seeing single person imagery being used with people working out at home to try and build that empathy with the person that's browsing the site to drive that purchase behavior. So it really is shaping the experiences that are being brought online in an interesting way.
Yeah, and speaking of content and how it changes with customer behavior, how have you seen a pivot in content changes, and how have you actually helped pivot content and marketing in the reaction of COVID-19? This is directed at both of you, so.
Well, I'll start if you like. Yeah, look, that's been really that's been a really interesting process. One of the things that we've learned is that we need to really not make assumptions about a customer's situation. So one of the things that we sort of started producing originally was, content related to working from home. And then you have to kind of realize that, well, actually, not everybody's working from home. A lot of people have been stood down and maybe don't have jobs, or there are people who are still actually needing to go into the workplace every day. I mean, certainly not least of which everybody who's working in our warehouse. So there are people who, you've kind of got to sort of encompass more than just one assumption in terms of what people's situation is. I mean, even in terms of kind of the price points of the products that we talk about at the moment, people's financial situations are really varied. right now. There are some people who are, you know, working from home and making the same money as they did before and everything's fine. But there are others who are in very different situations, and you know, we've got to kind of encompass all of those things in our minds before we put together a content strategy. So it's been things like, you know, can we make sure we have kind of like, you know, lux to less options, and can we focus on, you know, options that cater to all budgets, and can we, you know, can we talk to the people who are, you know, working from home, and also the people who are trying to wrangle kids from home, and so they don't actually have extra time in their day. You know, there's kind of all of those things. So it's actually put sort of some new challenges onto us and our content team in terms of being inclusive. But I think that's actually been a really positive thing, to just try and you know, realize that everybody's got different stuff going on at the moment, and we need to kind of be, you know, a friend and helpful to all of them. We've certainly, look, we actually had always planned to launch our YouTube channel in March, and so it kind of, was it March or April? Anyway, late March, early April, and so it turned out to be kind of good timing, because people have, you know, more, as a general rule, a little more time to watch YouTube videos. So but of course that's presented new challenges in terms of how do you produce content when everybody's working from home and they can't all be in the studio together. So the team has been extraordinarily adaptable, I think, to cope with that.
I think it's not only the production of the content, but the speed of producing the content. I think with people spending more time online, the consumer is hungrier than ever for fresh content, because they're, you know, coming back to the sites and expecting something different. So it's not only bringing the in-store experience and the content and the product to life, but it's actually how do you keep it refreshed and, you know, turn that around in a speedy manner. I think is also a challenge. And, you know, speaking to you know, our customers, what they're telling us is the same case really, that they're, you know, identifying new segments within their customer groups based on, you know, their financial situation. And, you know, I don't think anyone's necessarily got the perfect answer, but it is, you know, making brands think about how they target those particular segments in a considered way, especially with those who perhaps don't have as much, I guess, disposable income to continue to spend in the same manner that they were before. So, you know, those touch points in communication, particularly by email, you know, needs to demonstrate compassion and empathy for the situation that particular person is in. You know, perhaps by providing, you know, some light entertainment, ensuring that the brand values are consistent. But I think the key is just to continue to be genuine, rather than appear to be opportunistic, even when, you know, you're looking at those who perhaps have no financial impact from the overall situation. I still think, you know, you need to appear to be genuine, even though you're going to, you know, that group with your offers, but you may be looking at them thinking actually they're going to, you know, spend more. I think, you know, you need to continue to be genuine with all groups and continue to tell your consistent brand story.
Yeah.
But what we are hearing in terms of, you know, overall marketing spend is that spend has not been put on hold. In fact, some are trying to ramp up overall marketing spend on, you know, AdWords, social advertising, just given that, you know, there is more of an audience there at the moment. So that's actually an area where you should be looking to increase spend, which for a lot of businesses feels counterintuitive, because there are ways to reduce overall costs to protect themselves from the overall situation that we're in. But that is an area where, you know, if you can, I think you should be trying to focus on continuing to spend in that marketing area.
Yeah, we've had to balance ours a little bit based on capacity constraints. So we sort of identified early on that, okay, well, there's actually just a lot more customers in the market at the moment, and obviously we want to, we want to be in front of them, but it's no good driving all these, spending money to drive customers to your store and then giving everybody a really terrible experience where we can't dispatch their order for a fortnight. So we had to, it sort of requires a bit of operational scale up before we were able to scale up any of our advertising, because yes, that's the last thing you want to do, is to, hey, here's a whole bunch of new customers. Let's make sure that their first experience of Adore Beauty is really terrible. Like, we don't want to do that. Yeah.
So you talked about authentic messaging, and there is quite a fine line between authentic and maybe patronizing. So what are some tips you would give to help create authentic, thought-provoking content that can actually appeal to new customers in all sort of categories and demographics? And like some examples of what you've been doing with your YouTube channel, with advertising, that sort of stuff.
I think the best way to be authentic is to sort of stop trying to be authentic and just actually think about, I mean, I guess it helps if you sort of hire people who are your customer and a diverse group of people. And then I guess a useful way of looking at it is to go, okay, right, what are all the queries that are coming in via customer service or via social at the moment, and can we try and help? Can we try and help? And not to think about, here's a way that we can make things, super slick, or here's a way that we can tell our message. It's not about us telling our message. It's about trying to be there for our customers at a time where, they're a bit stressed out, or they need a kind of knowledgeable friend to help them out with things. And I guess, yeah, I don't know how you I don't know how you would try to be authentic. You decide that you want to show your real selves or not. And I guess for us that means, leaving the bloopers in and being real about things, and I guess it sort of means also normalizing a lot of the things that maybe people are nervous about talking about. So for us, I mean, we've launched our sex category, which we launched in December, and we've seen a pretty big uptake in that category this month, and it's like, all right, well, we did a campaign that was not just not a Friday night out, but every night in, and what does that mean for people who are sitting at home and single, and it's not an option to go out on a date, and let's just be real about all that kind of stuff. Let's be real about
Kate breaking up.
I think Kate may have just
need some box diet. If that's what they need to get through, then we need to help them with that.
Yeah, Kate, your camera's just gone inverted for a second. I'm not sure what's going on there, but while we figure that out, James, I'm going to ask you to. I mean, yes, your face is there. It's inverted. So, James, I'm just going to ask you the same question about authenticity in terms of content and how you can appeal to a customer without looking like you're patronizing or coming across as fake.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key to that is to not deviate away from your brand tone. So I think if you're entering a situation and your customers see you deviate from your core values and your core brand, that will appear to be opportunistic and maybe not as genuine in the situation. I think the key is to remain consistent, but remain empathetic to your customers and the situation. So really listening to exactly what they are asking you for via all of the means of communication and the various touch points that they have. But I think the key is to just listen, be human, and really just empathise with the situation that the customer is is going through, but not deviate away from your overall brand tone at at this point in time, just to ensure that you remain authentic and in line with the brand that you have built.
Yeah, I think that listening part is really important, James. I think that's really the key, is to make sure you're really listening to your customers and what they're saying. And if you do that, then you understand a lot more about where they're at and what they need from you.
So,
now I'm going to have one more point, sorry, just before we go to the questions, because we have quite a few from our audience. I was just going to ask about the future in terms of trading. So do you see more people adopting to online shopping after all of this is gone? Do you see it returning to what it was? What are your thoughts?
I think it's too soon to say, really, but it's hard to imagine that it won't have sped up that kind of natural shift to online shopping that we've already been seeing. I mean, that I've already been seeing for 20 years nearly, gosh. So that shift has been naturally happening, and now I guess what we can see is a lot more new customers that we haven't seen before, and hopefully if we have given them a positive experience this time, then you would hope that at least some of them will come back. We've also seen a big spike in reactivation of sort of older cohorts, so people, for instance, who might not have shopped with us for a few years, coming back in now. And look, I mean, I kind of think about the way that I feel as a consumer, and everybody's, I mean, we're going to have to get used to living with this virus for a little while, and everybody's going to be a little bit germ phobic for a bit. And I think if there's an in-store experience that is not going to sort of give you any particular value, or some sort of thing that you can't get online, and if it's not better than online, I think a lot of people will probably avoid that. If you don't need to go to the shops, then you won't. I know I certainly wouldn't, because it's there's going to be just that extra level of anxiety, I think, over in-store experiences for a while. Did I touch something? Did I remember to sanitize? Did that person breathe on me? Are they 1.5 meters away? Like I don't think people are just going to forget about that.
And James, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So a lot of the customers and the brands that we work with are asking us, what we think the future looks like, and they're in the process of constantly reforecasting. So I don't envy their position, but I think Kate's right in that we don't know. I think we can hazard an educated guess in terms of overall trajectory. I think it will see an increase in online shopping. I think we are probably yet to see the full economic impact overall on consumer spending. So I think there will be a wave of that will happen at some point. And I think the offer just has to be right in terms of product and price to ensure that there is still some consumer spending when people are probably going through a bit more hardship than they probably currently are. They haven't felt the downstream effect of that and unemployment and that type of thing. But I think in the medium to long term, there's certainly going to be an increase in terms of people who are shopping online. I think this whole situation has proven the fact that the online store is the store that never closes, never will close. We're going through a pandemic, and I'm sure you're all following in the media, but they're talking about the fact that this won't be the only one that we're going to have to deal with. So there could be another case of this. There could be a spike when restrictions are fully lifted. So I think that will always lean itself to the fact that the online store will be the safest place to shop. I think to Kate's point, there's a new group of people that are shopping online. It'll be interesting to see whether those people stay online, whether they are eager to get back to store. So looking at the data points will be very interesting on that particular group. But if I think about, just from a personal point of view, the likes of my parents, who probably would have always gone to store because they're a bit reticent to necessarily shop online. Oh, James, I'm not sure about putting my card details onto this website. I'm not sure what's going to happen. They're now having to shop online and probably thinking, actually, oh, that's quite an easy way to do things. I don't need to go to the shop necessarily to get that. So I think there'll be that particular group who will remain online, but I think data is key in how you turn those customers into repeat customers and ensure that there's a lifetime value associated with that new group. I think when it is deemed safe to return to store, there will always be that skepticism as to whether or not it truly is safe, and I think people will wait and see whether or not there is an overall spike in cases before they actually really truly do return to store. And it may be that this has become so much of a new normal and that a new habit would have been formed that they're just not going to feel the need to go to store anyway by the time we come into the point where it is deemed safe. So habits are being formed and are being shaped, and that will just change the way that people think about the high street and whether or not they actually need to go. I think it's going to be an interesting time. I think we have to wait and see. But the overall trajectory will be that the online volume and transactions, will increase, and visits that trend will continue. It's just about how many of those individuals will actually move back to store or just stay online. I think
it's interesting to think about that safety overlay, because when I think about when we first launched our online store 20 years ago, everyone was like, oh, I don't know about shopping online, I don't know if it's safe. And I think what this whole sort of coronavirus situation probably does is start to get people thinking the other way. I don't know about shopping in store, I don't know if that's safe. And actually to feeling a bit differently, I guess, about online and finding that a safer option than the risk of going in store. So that's really interesting to see what that'll do.
Yeah, definitely. And also the convenience that comes along with that as well. So it's not only the safety element, but there'll be those who haven't necessarily shopped online and are now understanding the convenience of doing so. I think
that's it. Yeah.
Time-saving exercise.
Oh, this is actually easy. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for chatting with me today and being a part of this webinar. It's been fantastic. We do have quite a few questions from the audience, so I'm going to go through some of them and we'll have a bit more of a discussion for the last 10 minutes. So we do have a question for Kate from Simon about fulfillment. So Simon asks, how much leeway have existing customers been given with delays, and how do you manage that promise?
We've found it's been difficult because we've not necessarily had the information on fulfillment delays ahead of time, particularly from like this sort of Australia Post side of things. Often we've not kind of found out what the delays have been until customers start contacting us going, hey, I've been waiting a week for my Express Post parcel, why isn't it here? I think it's this whole thing's kind of come as a big surprise to everybody. We've found that so long as we communicate, we ended up putting up kind of like a status page so that we could communicate what the delays were on our side. So roughly how long you could expect your order to be dispatched within. And we kind of fell at about kind of 3 days. If it was so long, it was sort of 3 days or less, people were okay with that, provided that we'd communicated that up front. And then we've also had to kind of then say, okay, right, here's roughly how long Australia Post is taking. If you're in WA or Queensland, because of the border closures, there's no flights, things are taking way longer. We've found our regular customers to be more accepting of that because they trust us already. We've found new customers are the ones who will kind of freak out instantly. You've taken my money, I don't know what's going on, I haven't got my thing, I've tried, I've emailed customer service 10 times a day, and because of course our customer service has been overloaded as well, sometimes it's taken a couple of days for us to get back to them, and they start panicking instantly because they don't know that we're trustworthy and they haven't had those experiences with us before. So you kind of can't over communicate at the moment. So we've updated our customer service autoresponder to say, hey, here are the answers to some of the most frequently asked questions. Yes, we do have your order. Yes, here's how long it's going to take. Here's how long it'll take us to get back to your email, that kind of thing. And then just to try and scale as fast as we can. People do accept at the moment that things are taking a bit longer, but what they don't accept is you not communicating that with them.
For sure. And James, do you have anything to add to that as well?
Nothing particularly to add. I think the communication is key. Managing expectations is key at this point in time. I think the challenge is always knowing what the last mile looks like and not necessarily having control over that. I'm certainly seeing, from a personal standpoint, that things are starting to get back to normal. I'm starting to receive products in line with when I would expect.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, we do have a question from Jade.
Pent-up demand.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Jade about omni-channel retailing. Now I know, Kate, this isn't so much aligned with you, but this is just a gold nugget bit of advice, if anyone has it, about harnessing the in-store and online experience once stores reopen and how to create a cohesive flow between the two. So does anyone have any advice about creating that cohesive state with omnichannel?
Yeah, I mean, so understanding, I guess, where your stock is going to be important, and really looking, first and foremost at where the demand will start to come from, whether or not it's coming from the store or whether or not it's coming from online, and ensuring that you've got your stock in the appropriate place to fulfill that order to the customer in the shortest time frame possible is going to be important. I think it's just coming back to data, it's going to be such a focus will be looking at the new data that's coming out and trying to identify those trends early to make the right business decisions around where you're holding inventory. You may see that stores that were performing pre-COVID incredibly well, who are in shopping centres on a fairly small square footage, are no longer going to be your star performing stores, and actually you're going to have your stores out in maybe some of the suburbs where there's a bit more space to actually start to perform far more strongly, and the level of foot traffic that will come into that store will significantly increase, and you may need to look at the fact that you need to be holding way more stock in that store. So it's really trying to get a view of stock will be super important. Getting a view of the customer will be super important, as I said earlier, to understand who's now going back to store in terms of your customer groups, to again make the right decisions in terms of targeting the various segments within the data. For me, I think if you have an omni-channel capability, I think it's going to be looking at the overall data and trying to identify those trends early will enable businesses to make the right decisions as to how they target the various customers across those channels.
For sure. Now, one final question I have, it is for both of you. As states start to relax some of the regulations, not all of them, but some of them, are there any opportunities that brands can take to increase new customer intake or loyalty, any higher revenue? Is there any sort of opportunities now that retailers should be taking that they haven't taken before?
Look, I mean, I think again, everybody's number one concern at the moment is how safe you make them feel and how much they trust you. So whether that's, you know, in store or online, to make sure that, you know, that trust is there and that people feel safe. I think that's kind of people's number one thing right now. I think it's probably really important. The one thing that I wouldn't want to see retailers do is trying to drive people in store. I have seen, you know, people do that sort of on emails in the past, you know, to have offers that are sort of in store only and you have to come in to go and get them. I think that would be a really bad time to be doing that. I think you have to go, okay, right, look, people are going to come in store when they feel comfortable, when they feel safe, when they feel ready, and that might be never for some people. And so maybe they're just online customers now, but I think you've got to continue to be customer centric always, and so the decisions that you make now shouldn't just be about, you know, your business and what your business needs, but your customers and what they need.
Definitely.
Well, I think, you know, coming back to communication, you know, communicating to your customer exactly what measures you've put in your store to make them safe, not forcing them into store, but just telling them that, you know, measures are in place to ensure that the experience is safe. Looking at things such as, you know, perhaps looking at time slots for VIP customers to come into store, who might be you know, want to come to store and are a high revenue customer, actually giving them that VIP experience to allow them the space to shop in store safely without others in the store. You know, I think those types, you know, I think it's about creating a safe space for the person that wants to come to the store to shop, rather than trying to drive those consumers into the store because the stores have been closed. So it's just creating that safe space to go to the store should they wish. And when things do become proven by way of people going back to store, then I'm sure, you know, the traffic back into store will follow. But it will really be by whether or not, you know, the data tells us that it is safe to go and shop in store again. But, you know, for retailers, it's really about creating a safe space for people to go back to store.
Definitely. Well, guys, that is all the time we have today. I wanted to thank Kate Morris and James Butchmeyer for actually being here. It's been a fantastic session. As always, I've learned a lot. I really appreciate these sorts of sessions with amazing industry experts. And yeah, thank you guys again. We'll see you next time.
Cheers, Ali. Stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.